Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for. Final question. Back to Kentucky. Josh, again, sent this via DM. I won't use his last name out of respect to him. But he says, what is the future of college basketball recruiting for Kentucky? Are players ranked 1 through 10 coming to Kentucky consistently, coming to college consistently? If not, is there a way to create a culture of retention like Kansas and Villanova? That's a great question. At some point, I may expand that out to a YouTube video because that's a very good question from Josh. So to answer the back end of that question first, can you build a culture of retention like Kansas or Villanova? It's a great question. And unfortunately for Kentucky, I do kind of think that the answer is probably no. Now, I will say in defense of John Calipari, it's going to be harder for anybody to have a culture of contention. I think that's a big culture of retention. I think that's a big reason Jay Wright got out. It's why I wonder if Tony Bennett over the next 10 years is going to be anything like Tony Bennett in the last 10 years. I wonder how long Tom Izzo has. He doesn't strike me as the kind of guy that wants to do this. All these guys that talk about culture and accountability and, you know, that era, I don't want to say it's over, but it's different. So, one, I don't know anyone that can really create true retention. But at the same time, I do think it's going to be hard at Kentucky, and I'll give you an interesting example. So, remember about 3-4 months ago or so, I was reading an article about the University of Arizona basketball program. And it was about this year, number 1 seed, all that good stuff. And in the article, they talked to Sean Miller, who, of course, was the head coach that got fired a year ago. Now he's at Xavier, friend of the Aaron Torres podcast. And Sean Miller talked about how once Arizona became known as a one-and-done school, it was hard to get players and convince them to stay 2-3 years. So he would go into a recruiting meeting saying, here's the vision for the next 2, 3, 4 years. This was all in an article, by the way. This isn't something that I've talked to Sean about myself, but it was in an article, and he said, you know, I had parents literally telling me, you don't go to Arizona to go to school for 3 years. I'm trying to be one and done and get out. And so I think it's going to be hard for Kentucky now that they're known as the one and done school to keep kids in the program for 2, 3, 4 years. Now, I know they just got the commitment from the kid from Pennsylvania whose dad played for Kentucky, and I think those are the right kinds of players to target. He's going to come. He might not play at all. He might redshirt, but he's coming in knowing exactly what his role is and that it's a 2 or 3 year process. Same with Lance Ware, same with Jacob Toppin, who did come in as a transfer, but knew he wasn't going to be in and out in 1 year. I just think it's going to be really hard, and for me, if I was John Calipari, I would do what I've been saying on this podcast for weeks. If you can go get the absolute best high school players, go get them. And Kentucky has gotten them. Shaden Sharp, the number 1 player in the class of 2022, before he reclassified, committed to Kentucky. Cason Wallace is a guy that's in everybody's top 5, top 10 by the end of the year. He's going to Kentucky. And so, I mean, if Shaden Sharp just stays, you're talking about 2 of the top 10 recruits in every recruiting service in the country. So it's not as though John Calipari's recruiting has completely fallen off. But to me, where you get in trouble is when you get that next tier of guys, that tier from about number 10 on, that just aren't those difference makers that are going to step into college and be an X factor right away. Every year there's 2, 3, 4 Paolo Bancheros, Cade Cunninghams, Evan Mobley's, Jalen Suggses, Jabari Smiths. And if you don't get those guys, you get stuck with that next group that thinks they're those guys that just doesn't have the same impact. And I think that's been Kentucky's problem the last 3, 4, 5 years. And so to me, the answer has been, and I've talked about it on this show, the answer has been pretty straightforward. It's go out, get the best of the best if you can, and then if not, backfill through the transfer portal. Now, I've talked about transfer recruiting. Not every player is going to be the perfect fit for every school. But at the same time, you are Kentucky, and there are always going to be players interested, as we've seen through the years. It happened this year with Kellen Grady and Oscar Shibwe. It happened this year with this offseason Antonio Reeves commit. C.J. Frederick wanted to come. I think there were other guys that if Calipari, the NIL, we're going to talk about all that. We just talked about that a minute ago. There's plenty of guys that want to come, is what I'm trying to say. This year they didn't really have a bunch of open slots, and so you kind of back off with the recruiting. But to me, that is the plan for Kentucky going forward. You have to go get the best of the best in high school. And if those 3, 4, 5 guys, 1 or 2 of them might choose you, 2, 3, 4 of them might choose somewhere else. Then you backfill through the portal. I just think getting an all-conference player from the A-10 or the Mountain West or the Pac-12, those guys are going to be better for you in college basketball than a freshman that's the 22nd best player in his class or the 13th best player in his class or the 17th best player in his class. You get the point.